Hey everyone, welcome back to another very exciting Unity VFX / particle system tutorial, and today we're going to be doing another VFX breakdown where we recreate the effect that you see here on the screen, which is originally from Kingdom Hearts, in the context of the final weapon hitting basically any surface, right? So here you can see a pre-rendered video I had as a reference for myself and as for you guys, where you can see that effect being in the game, and then here it is again in Unity in all its glory. So here's another close-up of it. Now I'm just going to do a quick overview of what we'll be doing, or rather what consists of this effect, right? So you see here we have the twinkles. We're going to reuse the texture we made in the last tutorial, so nothing new there. This is actually basically the same texture we made for the small glow spheres in the last tutorial, but I guess they got lazy or something and then just stretched it out, which we can again do in Unity, which you can see right over here, right? So this is that effect. And what else is there? Okay, and then there's the rainbow flare, which is probably going to be the most difficult, and even then it's not that hard. And then finally you have the little dot and then a little bit of a glow. So for this, we're going to be first starting out in Photoshop again, and then we're also going to be heading over to Filter Forge, because there's some part of that rainbow flare that can't easily be created in Photoshop, and then that's where Filter Forge really comes in handy. Okay, so let's get started. So I have the rainbow flare that I already created beforehand. I'm going to create a new document, 512 by 512. In this case, you know, you can make it whatever size you want, but for me, I think that's a good quality to size ratio. First thing we'll do is go and select the ellipse tool. Make sure that the fill is set to nothing, stroke is enabled, and maybe set to like 55 pixels, right? Next, I think I'll need a new guide layout, so 8 by 8. Just to split up the screen so I can easily make this and center it like so. And let me just check. That's about the same size. Okay, so to get this to look all rainbowy, we'll double click it, go on gradient overlay, and well, I already had the settings that I used before, so it automatically made it into rainbow. But basically select one of these that looks like a rainbow, this one, and then just set the color keys to match this sort of transition. And that looks really similar to, I think, what they have in the game as well, right? So you can see the bluish and the green and then the yellow and the red on the inside, maybe a little bit of purple on the out, and that's about good. Next we'll just blur this, so go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and then set that to about 10 or so. Maybe the inside is a little bit too harsh, so what I did was I added a new mask, went to Gradient Tool, set it to Radial, Black to Transparent, enable this, and if I do maybe something like that, it helps fade out the inside a bit more. Next, I'll duplicate this and maybe rasterize it by just adding a new layer, and then Control E to merge it down, Control T to enable the transform tool, make it quite a bit bigger actually, and then select both, hit Control G to group them, and then I'll add a new mask on the group. And then I'll go to the paintbrush tool, select a very soft, large brush, enable the guide so I can make a quick streak down, something like that, right? Just like so. And then I'll just fade this one out a bit more. What else was there? And this one, if you look in the game on the outside, is a little bit more decolored than the one on the inside, or it seems more blue tinted. I'm not exactly sure if that's the texture itself or just the blending over the other effects, but either way, we can go to Color Overlay, set like a bluish tint, and then if we turn up the opacity, we can kind of wash out the color and kind of interpolate it towards more of a bluish tint like so. And if we go over here, we can actually do the same thing, because if you notice in the game, it's not exactly very bright green or yellow or red. It's actually a little bit more faded out. And again, that could just be because of the blending and I'm seeing it wrong, but we're going to go hit white here and then kind of just fade it out a little bit like that, okay? So that's like the base of the effect, right? And the next part is to head on over to Filter Forge, because we're going to need this sort of starburst that you see here, which again is not too easy to create in Photoshop. And in Filter Forge, it can be done relatively easily. So I have like a bunch of copies here that I recreated over and over again. Basically, it's just a few gradient and noise components that make the final result, which is this. So the first thing we'll need is a free gradient, and then we need to set this to basically be radial. So we'll set this to, or sorry, angular, and then maybe set the start to 0.5, so it's in the center, 0.5 on Y as well, 1 and 1. So we have that, same as here. Next, we'll need another free gradient. And this time we're going to have it be linear, but mirrored. And then we'll set this to 0, 0, 0, 0, and then maybe like 0.5 to center it. And if we just do 2, 5, then we have 2 of them, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so next we'll create another, or rather the first elevation gradient. We'll get the first free gradient as the elevation, the second one as the gradient here, and then we get this sort of pattern. Next, we'll add a noise gradient. Set the base color to like gray or something, right? So we'll just set this to 128, 128, which is halfway, halfway. So that's gray. Turn this down, turn these up. And if you want to turn up the contrast, you can change the roughness. There's a bunch of fine details here you can mess around with. It doesn't really matter too much because most people won't even notice like the intricate details of the flare, right? So going back to Filter Forge, and let's see. Now we just need the final elevation gradient passed in as the elevation. Then we have the gradient, and there you go, right? So you just pass this, maybe actually turn up the scale or turn down the scale so we have more lines here. And that looks good. So we can just file, save the image, and then once you have the image saved, rendered out somewhere on your desktop, just drag it into Photoshop. I'm just going to redrag this one again here because I'm kind of lazy. And this is what it looks like. It should look like when you first drag it in, right? It's going to be something like this. So what I do is set it to soft light. You can see what that looks like, and that's pretty cool. Turn the transparency down. And while that does look like it's correct, if you take off the background, you'll see that it's actually still there, right? You can see it's over the transparent areas. That's not what we want. We only want it over the actual rainbow flare. So it's an easy fix. Just hold Alt and then drag your mouse between the group and this layer, and then just click. And then what it'll do is it'll only show up on top of the areas that you can see of the rainbow flare, right? So maybe turn this up a little bit. And I think that's not too bad, right? That's close enough. So you can just render this out, again, as a PNG, attach it to a material. We're going to be using an additive shader. And then, again, so I already have it pre-made here, so we're just going to continue with that. The other textures, they were made in the previous tutorial, so if you want to see how to make them, you can check them out. I'll leave a link in the description. Now that that's done, let's get started on the particle effect itself. So we will create... Let's just shut this off for a second. Create a new effect, particle system. Again, I've got a bunch of stuff here. You can ignore all this stuff, right? You'll probably have a very empty looking scene otherwise. I'm just going to put this up so it aligns with the camera a bit better. So this is going to be our folder particle system. And again, this is a particle system that really does nothing, but it's useful to play every one of its, children nested particle systems all at once. So if you just select this, it'll play all the particle systems together, and that's just really useful for previewing. So this one, we just disabled all the modules, and this is the one we're actually going to use, right? So we have the particle system created, disabled the modules, added a new particle system, and this is the one that we're going to start using. We're going to start off with the rainbow flare first, I guess, because that's the most prominent, or one of the most prominent parts of this effect. And I already have it here as a material. Whatever material you assigned it to, just drag it into the material slot here. So here I have the rainbow lens flare using the default particle additive shader, nothing fancy, just with the opacity and alpha and colors turned up to max. And then I'll just drag it in here, right? So you have now a bunch of instances, which looks crazy. Set the shape to actually none, because you're just gonna have them in the center. Set the speed to 0 because we don't need them going anywhere now. I've got some bloom post-processing, which is making this crazy. Emission, set this to maybe just one particle at a time. Set the rate over time to 0. Make sure this is 1 and 1. Set the duration to, let's say, 1. And the lifetime to about 0.4 seconds, right? So it just comes in and it goes. So in the original, in this effect, again, we'll play it back. It comes in. If you look at it really closely, it starts off smaller, gets bigger, right? So it just quickly got bigger, and then it kind of fades out. So it becomes super bright, and then it kind of fades out, which is what happens around here, where you can see it's blending on top of a bunch of things, and it just looks super bright. So what we'll do is color over lifetime, enable this, keep this 0, the 2 endpoints, right? Somewhere around maybe 10%, turn it up to max. So it looks like that. And then as for the size, let's set it to about 2. And we also need to change the size over lifetime. So enable the size over lifetime module. And again, I don't know which one's the default curve, but here you can see this just comes in very small and then becomes that big, which is about, I think, 2 unity units, which is also meters. So that looks pretty good. In this one, let's see if I can recreate what I did. Right, so in this one, it starts off as, it doesn't start off at completely 0. It starts off with some size, and then it kind of eases into its full size. So again, we'll just do that here. Drag the tangent little handle up here, like so. And I think that's not too bad. This could be maybe a bit bigger. So the other thing this effect does is that obviously it spins around, right? It does like a 180 or 360. And we can enable rotation over lifetime. Set this to 360. And then we've got the spinning going on. We can also turn down the opacity a little bit, just so. I think that looks good. Okay, so the next part we'll work on is, I guess, the center glow. So we'll just rename this because it's more or less done. Rainbow, lens flare, and this way we won't confuse ourselves. Put a new particle system. We'll call this is going to be the center glow. So this is going to be literally the dot in the center that you see right there, like that one right there, right? So last tutorial, I already made this texture. You can check out, I'll link it in the description. You can check it out. It's just the glow sphere. I'm going to be using Ultimate VFX just because I have the materials set up already. We're going to use, again, the additive version with the additive shader. I'm going to turn the shape off because it's just going to be a single particle emitting, so we can turn off the rate over lifetime and have one here, and then one here, and then one here, and then 0.4 for the start lifetime. So it just kind of exists, and maybe set the speed to 0 so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, so let's see. There it is. And it's not looping, so we can get it to loop. There you go. Okay, so what happens? Let's watch this effect again. And whenever you're like doing a breakdown, you'll find often you're gonna have to replay the effect over and over again. So it's good to have like a recording or a video you can reference, like I do in my case, right? So here, it becomes bigger and it just shrinks out. Okay, so that's pretty easy to do. Just go over to the size over lifetime module. Maybe, well, we'll start with this one, sure. And then we'll go and add a key somewhere here. Set it to clamped auto, and then get this down. Maybe just adjust the curve a little bit. So you can see it pops in and then disappears, like that. And that's looking good. We also need to color it a bit, I think, blue, because it's not exactly white, right? Yeah, so it's tinted blue. So we can make it a little bit blue, whatever you want, really. I mean, you could even make it red if you wanted to. It's up to you how you want to go about this. And actually, that does look pretty cool on its own. But now is not the time for tweaking. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so that's out of the way. What's next? So let's work on these twinkle particles that you see, right? Like these diamond, these ones right here. So we'll create another particle system. And the shape we'll set to sphere. Set the speed, or maybe the lifetime to 0.4. And I think actually this has a random lifetime between 0.2 and 0.4, so we'll set this to 0.2 and 0.4 just so it varies a little bit. We'll reuse, again, the twinkle texture that we recreated last time. I already have the material from Ultimate VFX, so I'm going to reuse that instead. And so we got the twinkles going on. Now, the way they start is I think they start from nearly the center and they kind of burst and then they disappear, right? So if we look here, they become smaller and disappear. So we'll again have to use the size over lifetime module. We'll use the same pattern as we did before. So you can actually save these. So if you, for example, the one that you made here, right? You can just go down, click this little gear, click new, and that way it'll save it. And in the next one, you can easily just select it, right? And that way you don't have to create the curve every single time. So again, these are kind of bluish. I don't think they change color or anything, so we can just kind of make them light blue like that. And then this is looping, but we don't want it to keep emitting over time. Rather, we want sort of like a burst. So let's see what I had in the previous one. I think at like 7 or something. The emission, yeah. So 7. So 7 of these should emit at a time every second. Like so. And that's good. I think I also had maybe limit velocity over lifetime, or had the start speed a little bit varied, so maybe like between 1 to 3 or something, or 4. If you wanted to slow down after they emit, you can enable limit velocity over lifetime, set that to something like 0.1, and then set this to 0.1, so yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe the size, could be varied a bit more, so maybe between 1 and 2 or something. Right, so that looks pretty good. If you want them to start right at the center, you could do that. If you want them to start a little bit offset, which is I think what's happening, maybe get this a little bit higher. Okay, so that takes care of the twinkles. Right, so I think that's actually starting to look pretty good. It looks more and more like the effect every passing moment. Next thing we'll do is add the orange streak. So these are the lazy streaks, which are basically again, it's just the glow sphere particle, which is very similar to the center glow particle. Actually, it is exactly this particle, but you can see what it looks like, right? But it's just stretched. And this one, the one from Ultimate VFX, is actually a bit sharper, but the one we recreated in the previous tutorial is more like the one in Kingdom Hearts, where it's a bit more blurry around the edges, so you can use that one. I'm just going to use the one from Ultimate VFX because I'm lazy. And so yeah, so we'll just rename this so we don't get confused. We'll call this what? Twinkles. Okay, so for this one, what we'll do is we'll just, because a lot of the settings will be shared, we'll duplicate this one and call it orange streaks, right? Because a lot of the configuration of that particle system will apply to this one anyways, and I don't want to redo it. So we'll change this now to glow sphere or whatever you called your material. And then obviously set this to orange because it's orange streaks, not blue streaks. And that looks pretty cool. So for this one, we have to set the render mode to stretched billboard, and that way they'll stretch in the direction they're going. Length scale to -8. So they look like that. This is obviously really over the top. So what we'll do is we'll maybe just pause it or maybe move it to where I want it to be like that. And what we have to do is basically adjust the pivot. So you can see that if you enable visualize pivot, you'll see that they're really off. And that's why when they shrink, they kind of go back to their origin. So what we'll do is we'll offset this until they're about centered again, which is about, I don't know, -2-ish. Yeah, actually exactly -2. Okay, so that takes care of that. So that way, you know, they look like that. And then we can have them, these go out way farther than the twinkle particles, so we can up the speed by which they're emitted and maybe turn this down to give them more slack. Right, so they go farther, and also these are much smaller too, so like 0.1 and 0.5 or something would be more accurate. That's not looking too bad. Maybe even, I don't know, 15, does that do anything? Yeah. Okay, that's too much, but you get the point. Just tweak these until they go out a bit farther. Maybe make this a bit more orange to match what you see in the game. And as for how many there are, I don't know, 15? Okay, I don't know if there's probably way less than that in the game, but this looks good. So we have the orange streaks completed. Next is the center glow lens flare. There seems to be a bit more of a harder glow around the center like that. It's a minor detail you can ignore, honestly, but we'll just do it anyways because we're already here. So we'll duplicate the center glow because it's going to use the settings from that one a lot. And this time we're going to be super lazy and use the default particle system. And we'll move it back. So if we turn this up, it'll be rendered behind the other particles, namely the center that we want it to be behind. We can make this like 2 or something, right? So there you go. Now it's got more of a soft glow. And we can call this center glow lens flare. I'm just going to copy this name. And then finally, the center glow soft. So this is, again, the same thing as this one, so we duplicated it, but it's just the bigger version. It would be like 5 even. You can see what that is, right? So it just gets bigger and kind of shrinks out of nowhere. So that's pretty easy. You see what that looks like so far. Maybe even make it wider or darker. It's up to you. There's a lot of things. This one's not even using the additive shader. You should probably use the additive shader, but we're just going to keep going for now. So we'll call this center glow lens flare soft. And as a bonus, I figured, you know, let's add more particles last time. So what I did was I just created a new particle system. This is basically done though, right? So this is actually completed. But what we'll do is we'll take it a little bit further because if we're here, we may as well customize some things. So again, let's make the new particle system sphere. Set the radius to start off at a very small, like almost right in the center. Have it no emission over time, no, not over time anyways. And then maybe turn this up to like, I don't know, 50 to 50, and then turn this down. Use the same little point that we made. Again, I'm using the one from Ultimate VFX. I keep reiterating this, but you get the point so far. You can just reuse the one that we made from the last tutorial. Link in the description, etc., etc. And let's see, start speed. Maybe make it 1 or random between 0.5 and 2 or something. Limit velocity over lifetime, 0.1, 0.5. Lifetime, very short-lived. And 0.5 actually, 0.2. Something like that. Actually, you can't even see it right now. There you go. The reason for that is this needs to be turned down the duration. So there you go. Now it's every 1 second, right? We also want to change up the start size to maybe like 0.2. And maybe give it random 2 colors, red and blue. Then also have it, first of all, this needs to be bigger. Next, size over lifetime. Again, reuse the little preset we have, and that looks cool, right? We can always keep changing it up, keep adding our own variation, like adding noise, maybe turn up the frequency, right? Change up the whatever you want to do to make it your own and make it really weird. So that's what that looks like. And I think that wraps everything up. So the effect looks a lot like what you see in the game. You can see here what it looks like in the game, and again what it looks like in our version, which is very similar. Again, you can keep tweaking, make it your own, add your own parts like we did right here. And I think that's about it. So thanks for watching, everyone. Please subscribe, leave a comment, rate this video, share it with your friends, whatever. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye. And I think we did a pretty good job. So, thanks for watching. Shut up. Stop it. Stop it!